First, they started telling me what things I would no longer be allowed to say. Then they told me that if I did try saying them in public, they would shout me down and then destroy my livelihood and send angry mobs to my home to threaten me and my family. Then they told me there were no differences between boys and girls, and that I had to pretend that some boys were girls and some girls were boys, and that if I didn't, I could be arrested. Then they told me that being colorblind was hateful, and that people with different skin colors must be subject to different standards and laws. Then they told me that anyone on the planet who wanted to live here must be allowed in. Then they told me the government would be taking over my health care and be deciding which doctors I would be allowed to see, and that anyone on the planet who moved here illegally would also be allowed to see the doctors, and that because the doctors would soon have so many more millions of patients, that I mustn't be in a hurry to see one. Then they told me that being a man was a very bad thing, and that if a woman accused me of sexual assault, I would be presumed guilty. Then they told me they would be sifting through everything I'd ever written since I was in grade school in search of wrong words or thoughts I had expressed. Then they told me that although I didn't realize it, I hated minorities and homosexuals, and that I had spent my whole life oppressing women, and that my hate was the reason so many blacks were in prison. Then they told me that my wife must be allowed to kill our unborn child whenever she wanted, and that I had no say in this life or death decision. Then they told me that they had enlisted many of my acquaintances and colleagues to report to them if I said something I wasn't allowed to say. Then they got all the Hollywood stars and all the lawyers and all the journalists to teach me what opinions I must have. Then they told me that American history and the American flag were things I should be ashamed of. And then they started destroying any statues or art that expressed the wrong ideas. Then they told me I was foolish to believe in God, and that if I did, I should keep it to myself. Then they told me that if I donated any money to the wrong politicians, they would put my name and address and where I worked on the internet so that I could be mob punished. Then they told me the Constitution was old-fashioned and that large parts of it interfered with achieving their social justice goals and must be scrapped. Then they told me that just in case I refused to do what they told me to do, they would be coming to my home to take away my guns. To take away my guns.